All right. Shalom Yasharala. Before we get started, we're going to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Chakwadash, and double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect. Back another video, another lesson. The title of this one is going to be called Understanding Jew nor Greek. All right. And in this lesson, we're going to get the meaning of what, or the understanding of the, when it says Jew nor Greek, because a lot of Christians, when they see that, they think that's talking about other nations. They'll see Jew, which is talking about the Jews, the scribes, Pharisees, the circumcision, and they'll see Greek and think it's talking about another nation. All right, which the Greeks, when it's going into that, it's talking about other Israelites that fell away from the faith or from the laws, statutes, and commandments. And to understand that, you gotta know the history to understand the mystery, is a saying here at Great Millstone. So first, let's go read it. Let's go Galatians. All right, this is the book of Galatians 3:28. Pull it up for you. All right, and it says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Hamashiach Yahushai. All right, so people will see this, or Christians will see this and say, see, it doesn't matter if you're a Jew or a Greek. All right, we're all one under who they call Jesus Christ, which his real name is Yahushai. All right, but the book of Galatians was written to Israelites scattered in Galatia. Let's get First Peter. First Peter 2? No. Let me see. No. It's First Peter 1. All right. First Peter 1:1. Peter, an apostle of Yahushua HaMashiach, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia. All right, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. All right, now let's get this word strangers. Well, let's look up scattered. Yeah. Look up scattered. It says, read it again. Peter, an apostle of Yahushua HaMashiach, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. All right, look at the word scattered. Okay. Scattered is diaspora.
Strong's G1290. Diaspora. Diaspora.
Diaspora, or diaspora. It says a scattering, dispersion. It says, definition right here, of Israelites dispersed among foreign nations, because that's a curse. If you read Deuteronomy 28, James 1:1, it's all throughout the Bible. All right, but those are just a few that the Israelites were scattered throughout the world. All right, they were scattered among different nations. All right, if you go down here to the Strong's definition, it says dispersion, i.e., specially and consecrately the converted, all right, Israelite resident in Gentile countries, which are scattered abroad. And it says the converted, look at converted. It says of a building have been adapted to suitable for a new purpose. Let me see. Convert, cause to change in form, character, or function. Change or be able to change from one form to another. All right, change. Okay, so when you convert, you change into a new person. And then we converted from being, if you want to say Gentiles when we were in the world, to being, Israelites. All right. So the book of Galatia, or Galatians, are written to Israelites scattered throughout Galatia. Okay. Let's read Romans 10:12. All right. It says, I'll start at 10. It says, for with the heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. For the scripture saith, whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon him. All right. Let's look up Greek and see what it means. The word Greek is Hellene, or Helen, or Helene. It says a Greek, either by nationality whether a native of the main land or of the Greek islands or colonies. In a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own. Their primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship. This is down here a Hellene Grecian or inhabitant of Hellas, by extension a Greek-speaking person, especially non-Jew, Gentile Greek. All right, and you had Israelites who didn't call themselves Israelites. They called themselves Greeks. They took on the Greek fashion, they took on the Greek customs and the Greek language, and they spoke the Greek language, and they took on the Greek ways, Salakia. All right, and if we can get that in First Maccabees 1:48. It was another one I was trying to look for, but I'll start at First Maccabees 1, and I'm gonna start at verse 10, and I'm gonna jump around. So First Maccabees 1:10, and it says, "And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus or Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, which he came from the Seleucid lineage. It says, son of Antiochus the king, who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 130th and 7th year of the kingdom of the Greeks." Verse 11, "In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein, that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief." And that's where you get the uncircumcision, right? Let's get Romans 2. Romans 2, and let's look up uncircumcision. All right. Let's just read Romans 2. I'll read Romans 2 and start at 25. It says, "For circumcision verily profiteth, if thou keep the law. But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. Therefore, if the uncircumcision keep the righteousness of the law," and who's the uncircumcision? Those, who weren't raised in the law, statutes, and commandments, right? Let's look it up. Uncircumcision, having the foreskin uncircumcised, a Gentile. All right, we know the Gentiles can actually, it can actually mean a non, Israelite, but it can also mean an Israelite as well, because Israelites are throughout the Bible. More than likely, the Gentiles, when you see it, if it's pertaining to salvation, it's speaking of Israelites. But if it's speaking of destruction and slavery, it's speaking of the other nations. All right, so a Gentile can be an Israelite. All right, but it says, "Therefore, if the uncircumcision keep the righteousness of the law, shall not his uncircumcision be counted for circumcision? And shall not uncircumcision, which is by nature, if it fulfill the law, judge thee, who by the letter, the law, and circumcision does transgress the law? For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision, which is outward in the flesh," which is, physical, when you cut around the, the penis area. "But he is a Jew, which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, and the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men but of the Most High. All right. So it's all about your inner man, and that's what the scribes, the Pharisees, Sadducees, that's what they failed to realize. You know, they were perfect in the law. Outwardly they had the fringes, the phylacteries, the tefillums, you know, but inwardly they didn't change their inner man. But the Gentiles, the Israelites, who didn't know about the law at all, like when they came in and heard the word, when they came in and heard heard the preaching of the word through faith, they kept the law to the best of their ability. That their uncircumcision was counted for circumcision, but the scribes and Pharisees' circumcision was counted for uncircumcision. You know, so Lord willing, that makes sense. So let's go back and read that again. It says, "And made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominion of 2 realms. Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen and great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death." I'm going to jump down. All right. Let me see. I'm going to read verse 25. It says, "Therefore there was a great mourning in Israel, in every place where they were, so that the princes and elders mourned, the virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women changed." That's when they started putting hell on us, right? "Every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion." It says, "And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Israel." Jump down. I'm going to start at verse 41. It says, "Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people." Now, pay attention to this part. "And everyone should leave his laws, so that all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king." And this is called Hellenization. Let's look that up real quick. All right. It says Hellenization refers to the spread and adoption of Greek culture, including language, customs, and political systems by non-Greek populations, particularly in the wake of Alexander the Great's conquests. This process significantly impacted the ancient world, particularly the Eastern Mediterranean and the Near East during the Hellenistic period. All right, so other nations were caught up in the Hellenization as well, but it was it focuses more on the Israelites, right? And you go more into that. It says, verse 43, "Yeah, many also of the Israelites, right, consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king has sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings, and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances." So this is where you get, the those who consented unto, the Greek way. All right, you get all the way to the New Testament. That's where you get, Jew nor Greek, because you did have, all right, the Maccabees, all right, chapter 2, verse 1. "In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, and a priest of the sons of Jorib from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons: Jonan, called Caddis; Simon, called Thassi; Judas, who was called Maccabeus; Eleazar, called Avaron; and Jonathan, whose surname was Aphis. And he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem. He said, "Woe is me! Wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people, and of the holy city, and to dwell there, when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers? Her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets, her young men with the sword of the enemy. What nation what nation hath not had a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils?" All right. Mattathias and his sons, they kept the law. All right. Let me see if I can find it. Verse 17. Then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise: "Thou art a ruler and honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards." Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice: "Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. Power forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words, to go from our religion," all right, "either on the right hand or the left." All right, so this is where you get the friction between the Jews and the Gentiles, which are the Israelites who fell away. All right, because you had certain of those who stuck to the traditions and stuck to the law, statutes, and commandments of the Lord, who wasn't gonna bow to the ways of the heathen. But you had those who followed the ways of the heathen. That's where you get this is where you get Jew nor Greek from, right? And this is where you get the Elder Yashawama brought it out. You skip, you read the Old Testament. You got the first beast, which is the Syrian Babylonian Empire. You got the second beast, which is the Medo Persian Empire. Then you got the third beast, which is the Greek Empire. Then you got the fourth beast, which is the Roman Empire. You skip over the third beast and you go straight to the fourth beast, which is in the New Testament. All right, you seeing Jew and Greek and uncircumcision and circumcision, so you get confused, not knowing what that really is, not knowing what that truly means, because you got to get the history to know the mystery. All right, so when you go back, let's get Galatians. Right, this is Galatians 2, because Titus, he was a Greek. Well, he was uncircumcised. There's Galatians 2:1. Then 14 years after I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas, and took Titus with me also, and I went up by revelation and communicated with unto them that gospel which I preach among the Gentiles, but privately to them which were of reputation, lest by any means I should run or had run in vain. But neither Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. See, Titus was a Greek. Okay, he was of those who he was of that line who fell away from the traditions and the law, statutes, commandments of the Lord. Right. Let's get Timothy in Acts, the 16th chapter, and verse 3. And these were Israelites. Titus is an Israelite. Timothy is an Israelite, right? I'm going to start at verse 1. Then came he to Derbe and Lystra, and behold, a certain disciple was there named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman, which was a Jewess, and believed, but his father was a Greek. You see, so his mother was a Jewess. She was a Jew, but his father was what? A Greek, which he was an Israelite, but he didn't follow. But he followed the ways of the heathen. He didn't follow the ways of being, an Israelite, which was well reported of by the brethren that were at Lystra and Iconium. Him would Paul have to go forth with him, and took and circumcised him, because of the Jews which were in those quarters, for they knew all that his father. So I can read that again. For they knew all that his father was a Greek. All right. Let's get the 6th chapter real quick. Verse 1, Acts 6:1. And in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews, because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. What is Grecians? Let's look up Grecians. All right, who are the Grecians? Hellenistes is the Greek word. Is a Hellenist, one who imitates the manners and customs of the worship of the Greeks and used the Greek tongue, used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. Okay, a Hellenist or a Greek-speaking Jew. So you got, which is the same thing, a Hellene or a Hellenist. They're both the same thing. All right, a Greek who doesn't, which is an Israelite. All right, that doesn't use the Greek tongue, and you got a Hellenistes, which is an Israelite that speaks, that it says used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek, and they spoke the Greek tongue. You see, so really it's the same thing. Jew nor Greek is, which really is circumcision. The Jews, who are circumcised, which you had John the Baptist, he was a Jew. All right, Yahushua, the 12 disciples, they were all Jews. They were all the circumcision. They were raised in the customs. And you had the uncircumcision. You got Titus, Timothy, and another example is Acts the 10th chapter. Cornelius, he was a Gentile, but he was an Israelite. And if you need that breakdown, brothers got videos on it. All right, you can go look that up on your own. But Cornelius was an Israelite. All right, he was in a Gentile state of mind. That's all it really is. A Gentile, an Israelite, a Gentile is just an Israelite in a Gentile state of mind. You know, that fell away. So understanding Jew nor Greek. You know, so Jew, when you see Jew nor Greek, is just talking about, Israelite and another Israelite. That's all it really means. You know, Christians try to equate that to, other nations, when other nations don't, in the Bible, don't get salvation. You know, when the Lord Yahushua returns, when he comes back, he's only going to save his people. Matter of fact, let's get that real quick. This is Matthew 1 and 21. And he shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Yahushua, not Jesus, for he shall save his people, all right, from their sins. And who is his people? Let's get Acts 5 and 29. Then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey the Most High rather than men. The God of our fathers raised up Yahushua, whom ye slew and hanged on a tree. Him hath the Most High exalted. All right, him hath God, Yahweh, exalted with his right hand to be a prince and a savior, for to give repentance to Israel and forgiveness of sins. So when he comes back, he only died for the nation of Israel. When he comes back, he's only going to save the nation of Israel, starting with the elect. All right, because that's all. When the Lord returns, he's not going to save the whole nation. On this go around, only the elect will be delivered, but the nation of Israel will come back through the loins of the elect. And that's another video for another day. But Lord willing, this was edifying. You got something out of it. It was another one I was trying to find to show you that, there were men who fell away and followed the ways of the heathen. They even, teamed up with them. I think it's in this chapter. Yeah. This is First Maccabees 7 and verse 5. It says, I'm going to start at verse 3. It says, wherefore, when he knew it, he said, let me not see their faces. So his host slew them. Now when Demetrius was set upon the throne of his kingdom, there came unto him all the wicked and ungodly men of Israel. These are the ones who fell away, having Alcimus, who was desirous to be high priest for their captain. And they accused the people to the king, saying, Judas Maccabees and his brethren have slain all thy friends and driven us out of our own land. Now therefore send some men who thou trustest and let him go and see what havoc he had made among us, and in the king's land, and let him punish them with all them that aid them. You see, so you had wicked men who aided, the heathen. And these are those who fell away and took on the ways and customs of the heathen, of the Greeks, which were the Edomites at that time. So this is where you get Jew nor Greek in the New Testament. That's who Paul was speaking to, just Israelites who fell away. So Lord willing, this was edifying for you brothers and you sisters out there. All right, we gonna give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Chakwadash, and double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and salutations to those for elect. Lord, you edified. So next video I'm gonna say, Shalom.